Good morning and welcome to part 15 of Julie of the Wolves. The last thing that happened, we found out the reason why Julie left, why my ex left. Daniel had come home really angry from being teased, and he attacked her. She's like, I'm not gonna stand and be in fear of someone all the time. So she left. Part 3. The memories vanished. The wind screamed, "Woo!" My ex touched the lichens on the top of her frost heave. "Amarok!" she called again, then ran down the slope and climbed to the wolf den. The site was silent and eerie, and the puppy's playground was speckled with bleached bones like tombstones in a graveyard. She picked one up and saw that it was jagged with the marks of little teeth. With some carving, it could be made into a comb she'd been wanting. Glancing around, she saw the club-like base of an antler. "A weapon," she said. "I may need it." A snowy owl floated past, turning his head as he peered down at her curiously. "I'll see you in San Francisco," she called. He set his eyes on some distant goal, bowed his wings, and flew southward as silently as the shadows he cast. The wind twisted a strand of her hair, and as she stood on the Wolf Hill, she felt the presence of the great animals she had lived with. Amarok, Nail, Silver, Kapu. She wondered if she would ever see them again. The wind gusted. She turned and walked slowly back home. Trailing her fingers on the tips of the sedges and thinking about her departure, at the top of her frost heave, she froze in her tracks. Her house was crushed in, and her sleeping skins were torn and strewn over the grass. The meat she had laid out on the grass was gone. Her icebox was empty and open. "Aye!" she cried. "My food! My life! I'm dead!" Running from broken house to dumped cooking pot to icebox, she felt needles of fear move up her spine, spread into her arms, and pierce her whole body. Who had done this? What bestial creature had taken her food? She looked desperately around and saw, crouched in the reeds almost beside her, the angry Jello. His tail was swishing slowly. His ears were forward. She understood his message and stepped back. Then she knew that was wrong. She must not give in. Hand tightening on the antler club, brandishing it, growling, she flung herself upon him and bit the top of his nose. His eyes widened, his ears and body drooped, and his tail went between his legs. He groveled on his belly and came up to her smiling, head lowered humbly. Desperate furious, she lunged at him. Jello rolled to his back and flashed the white hair of surrender. She did not strike. She could not strike a coward. "Jello," she cried, "why? Why did you do it?" Holding him in abeyance with the antler, she glanced around the ruins of her home and took stock of the damage. All the food in the cellar and on the ground was gone, and her pack was not in sight. Brandishing her weapon, growling at Jello, she backed toward the sod house, kicked back the ruins, and saw the pack under the crushed roof. It was intact. Jello had not found the meat in it. Her mind raced. She had a little food, and Kapu had told her that lemmings were coming back. She could yet make it. "Arrgh!" She snapped at Jello and lowered her club. He rolled over, stood up, and tail between his legs, fled into the twilight. When he was gone, she stood for a long time. Finally, she picked up her sleeping skin and tore a fiber from the new hide. She got out her needle and, sitting with her legs out straight in the manner of Eskimo women, began to sew. A lemming ran across a lichen patch. She stopped working and watched the little animal add a mouthful of grass to its round nest. A movement caught her eye, and she glanced up to see a little least weasel washing his belly on the other side of the knoll. New white fur was splotched across his gold back. He finished his toilet, and when he sat down, he disappeared under the reindeer moss. "You are tiny," she said and smiled. Another cycle was beginning. The animals who preyed on the lemmings were also coming back. My ex put her needle away, rolled her ground skin into a tight bundle, and tied it to the bottom of the pack. Then she got her pot and sleeping skin, her ulo and man's knife, the bones and her flowers. She packed them, tied a thong to the new caribou skin so she could drag it behind her, and lined up her pointer stones with a distant frost heave. It's time to go, she said, and walked away, not looking back. Many hours later, she opened her pack, spread her skins, and took out a strand of smoked meat. A snowshoe hare screamed and recognized the cry of death. My ex picked up her club and ran off to take the rabbit from its killer. Rounding a clump of grass, she came upon an enormous wolverine, the king of the Arctic weasel family. Slowly, he lifted his head. The wolverine was built low to the ground, and his powerful front feet were almost as big as a man's hand. Utterly fearless, he looked her in the face. Shoot, she said, and jumped at him. He left the rabbit and came toward her. She jumped back and raised her club. He leapt lightly to the side, snarled, and sauntered away. Gingerly, she snatched the hare, turned, and fled back to camp. The wolverine's fearlessness sent goosebumps up her spine. Hastily throwing the hare on the caribou skin she was dragging for just such a purpose, she walked on. A tern floated past. She took out her sinew, held her arm under the bird, and singing aloud, strode toward Point Hope. At sunset, the clouds were dark and soft-edged, like bears. They could dump a foot of snow or a sprinkle of snow. She dug a niche in the side of a heave with her man's knife, folded her ground skin into an envelope, and pushed it into the ground. With deft hands, she pressed her sleeping skin into the envelope, then undressed. The fur nestled her, and when each toe and finger was warm, she peered solemnly out of her den. The sky darkened, the clouds lowered, and the wind blew like a charging buck. In less than a minute, she could see no more than the fur around her face. The snow had come. Buried in her skins like an animal in its lair, my ex wondered about Amarok and Kapu. Would they be curled in furry balls, or would they be running joyously through the first storm of the winter, following their noses to game? When she awoke, the sun was out, the sky was clear, and only a feathering of snow covered the tundra, just enough to make it winter. Before she had dressed, however, the crystals had melted, all but a few on the north sides of the slopes, and spoke of things to come. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. So my ex is now out on her own. She's defended herself against Jello at least one time. So we'll see what happens next.